This week I want to talk about unique camera angles and concepts that are not only easy to replicate and fun to experiment with, but also challenge you creatively to think outside the box. This video is all about using mirrors and reflections as a tool to develop interesting perspectives and camera angles to improve your storytelling. The first clip is a simple over-the-shoulder shot, similar to the one I did in my lighting on a budget video a couple of weeks ago, but I didn't want to do it the exact same way. That's why I decided to not use any external lights and went with natural lights only, which kinda helped me in a way, because the hardest part about working with mirrors is to not get your lighting equipment or camera in the shot. The light is coming from the right side and just hits a small part of my face. It was quite diffused already because of the blinds in front of the window. I could have opened up the blinds to get a little bit more light in the room, but as I have quite a fast lens, I decided to stick with the softer and more diffused light. I thought about using a fill light to get a little bit more light into the shadow areas on my face, but ultimately decided against it because it looked a little bit sourcey and didn't fit into the shot. So I fully embraced the darkness on this one and focused on exposing for the highlights. Normally I want to film against the light source from the dark side, but in this case the camera's on the other side. We also have a lot of light in this area, but since the focus is on the face and I turn it only slightly towards the window, we are basically filming from the dark side, thanks to the mirror. And for all the people that are struggling with exposing S-Log2 correctly, I filmed this exact scene using no picture profile at all and tried to color grade it in the same way to compare it with the S-Log2 footage. So we have the S-Log2 footage on the left and the one where I didn't use a picture profile at all on the right side. It's actually quite similar, but honestly, I would always prefer to shoot in log as it gives me a lot more room to play with, especially with 8-bit footage. But it's also nice to see that you don't always have to rely on using S-Log2 if it's too overwhelming. With this one, I wanted to get a little bit more creative, because in the beginning I was shooting exclusively with mirrors, but I realized that, as in this case, picture frames can also reflect. In the beginning I turned on this little practical lamp to get a separation between the bright foreground and the dark background with the silhouette. However, I was not only shooting through the picture frame, but at the same time through this large mirror attached to the opposite wall. So this is actually a frame within a frame within a frame, which really benefits the composition. So it's not so much about lighting the subject perfectly, as it is intended to be kind of a silhouette shot, but more about creating an interesting composition that wouldn't normally be possible. This is a rather simple setup. We have a pretty big window right here, which throws enough light on the subject and makes the whole room a little brighter, but I still turned on the lamp in the background to act as a practical and to light up the dark area a bit to avoid any noise. Since the mirror is tilted forward a bit, we have these angled lines that make the image look a little different than normal. I shot directly into the mirror to shoot from the dark side again. In this case I could have filmed this without the mirror, but a big advantage is that you can still place things in front of the mirror, like candles or flowers, etc., to create more depth in the image. In my case, I didn't really like the look of it and it felt a bit distracting, so I kept it simple. Quick tip at the end: if you happen to be filming in a small room, consider using a mirror. If you put it against the wall and film into it, you'll practically have a wider angle and a unique perspective. With this shot, I wanted to incorporate textures, like rain, into the reflection as well. That's why I went out in the rain and pointed the camera at the table and went to the opposite side. You could just as easily shoot through a window of a car or something similar to get the same effect. It was honestly quite difficult to focus properly because the autofocus doesn't really work in this scenario, and the rain did not make it easier at all. so I focused on the chair first and then stood in roughly the same place afterwards. In the end, I filmed many more shots with this technique because, as I said, it's not only based on mirrors, you can just as well use picture frames, windows, I even used a piano. As a filmmaker, it's not only about creating cool looking shots, but also asking yourself the question of how the composition can support the story. In this case, it's about opposition and creating distance. Two people having their own opinion in this debate, which is reflected by framing them in the mirrors. Both are isolated and want to stand their ground. But there are different power levels. By having one standing and one person sitting, it suggests that the right one is dominating the debate. So even with a limited space to place the actors, you can create different scenarios to influence your story. So if you're struggling with finding a good composition, try asking yourself not only where, but why the subject should stand or sit in a certain location. I was really happy that the mirrors are quite far apart. That way I could not only place my camera right in the middle of the frame to cover both mirrors, but left enough space to fit the additional lights as well. The big light bulb in the background was basically just a practical to motivate the light coming from here to illuminate my face and get a good exposure. I used this IKEA light again, which is already quite diffused to act as my key light, and as it's round, it provides light in both directions. I put some towels on the light to act as flags to block some of the light from spilling everywhere, and that's it. And on another note, I want to mention that I just created a poll on the community tab to determine what the first community challenge should be like, where everybody can participate, and at the end of the month I'm going to create a playlist with all submissions. Feel free to participate and share your ideas. If you have another idea for the challenge, just write a comment, and if it gets enough likes, I will include it in the poll as well. Also, don't forget to use this tag in your title if you upload a video to YouTube, so I can find it and include you in the playlist.